All right, so I'm going to try to talk about pedestrian safety at intersections in Ward 11, and this because most cycling in the ward occurs on the sidewalk. This is also about cycling safety, as this guy's demonstrating right here. This is where you end up waiting for your moment to use this intersection on a bike, and this is an important east-west cycling corridor to get over to the rail crossing up in here. This is the only available surface crossing. So if you want to go between the downtown and Ward 11 on a bike without breaking the law, as in like without cycling on the sidewalk of right through here on Keel. Or if you're not doing that, like everybody expects that cyclists are going to bike down Runnymede and then get onto Annette if they want to get downtown from Ward 11, but it just takes longer, and it also involves going under this Runnymede underpass, which is ultra sketchy. It's it's got a bike lane, but these days I'm using the sidewalk to get through here because every time I go through here on my bike, something terrible and scary happens. So this intersection right here is a popular route for cyclists on my bike. In order to turn right here and get out of that little road there, which is part of the route, I've got to get into the through lane, so I got to get here, and then wait here, and then cross with the green light, and then use that sidewalk to get over here. And that's partially because if you are planning on using this crosswalk, you're fighting with drivers who are turning right. Now, as a pedestrian or as a cyclist, both of these crosswalks are not really terribly usable. They're both very scary to use because of all this right turning traffic and all this what is turning through here? Left turning traffic that's turning into here. So when the light is green going east-west, drivers really are intimidating the living daylights out of pedestrians here. It's very sketchy. And on this crosswalk here too. So I recently had this this moment where I was waiting here to cross over there, and I had to wait a whole signal because there's already a driver here. I couldn't tell where they were looking. They're sort of lurching forward, and I'm like, okay, so do I walk in front of this car that is about to punch it in order to make a right in time to avoid getting hit from here? And it's all because of the extremely high speed that people are going to do on their way through. Although, no, that wouldn't make any sense. Why was I scared of that? It's basically because, yeah, all these people were lined up here waiting to turn right, and as soon as the light went green to go north-south, they'd have to wait for this traffic. So they're really rushing it and pushing it. So at a certain point, somebody stopped and they're waving me across and stuff like that, but the timing wasn't even right because I wasn't ready to go because I was waiting. So these crosswalks are not really working for pedestrians. We don't really have access to them. Like on a crosswalk, pedestrians are supposed to have the right of way, but on these crosswalks in this ward with these massive super high-speed streets, pedestrians have to yield to drivers. And that's because if you're walking around here, you're going to have some kind of crazy incident like the one that I had over at it was at Dundas and Keel. No, it was at Dundas and, let me find this. It was at Dundas and Jane. No, it's at St. Clair and Jane. This is just a nasty intersection for pedestrians. So this video is basically me telling a few pedestrian horror stories that I've personally had that illustrate the problem for pedestrians in this ward. So um, here I am. I was basically where this guy is, and about to walk across here. So I'm cruising across here. The person comes flying around the corner, misses me by like a few inches. They're doing like 40 or 50. So part of the problem here is the generous turning radius, which encourages high speed going around this corner. High speed going around this corner, it doesn't really work because there's these two crosswalks here. So there's no point in encouraging drivers to move very quickly around this corner. The other thing is we need these crossings to be raised. They're marked, they've got a different texture to them, and that is not doing what we need it to do. Of course, raised crossings means you can't just bomb through here at 50 kph, which would definitely slow down the intersection and reduce the efficiency of the intersection. But most of the crashes that we're seeing happen are occurring in these intersections, and their lethality, their extreme danger associated with them comes from the amount of speed. So we're not going to be able to accommodate super high speed through these intersections. That's just the bottom line, because when there's no way for drivers to like be able to slow down and be careful and be considerate when they are expected to, when they have this a lot of pressure behind them from all these other drivers. Another part of the problem is because there's so many lanes going in and out of this intersection, like because Jane Street here is, 5.5 lanes wide, and so is St. Clair, the signal time has to be super long, and so people really, really, really want to get through the signal, so they're punching it. They're just like attacking the green and yellow lights. So theoretically, if this intersection gets, if it gets narrowed a bit, if it goes on a road diet, theoretically, the signal timing wouldn't have to be as intense. Also, if these crossings were raised, then theoretically maybe we could miss out on an extra left turning phase or something like that. But I don't know. This is stuff that I'm just not knowledgeable enough to know. But I do know that this corner radius situation is way, way, way too generous. The other thing is, look, we got bus stops here. We got tons of pedestrians that are going to be here. We need to give them some room. We need to give these pedestrians some room. So this is a spot where I don't use this crosswalk anymore. Like, I avoid this crosswalk, and if I'm on my bike, I'll choose to cross like mid-block. And a lot of people actually avoid the intersections for crossing on foot or on their bike, and instead cross mid-block because they have like longer sight lines. So you have to wait for super long, but you don't have drivers coming out of nowhere at 50 kph about to hit you. This situation, the only reason I'm alive is because I was where I was instead of like 2 feet over. That's the only reason I'm alive, and didn't take a hit. The driver that almost hit me was like shocked. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." He wasn't even, the aggressive, crazy type. He's just driving according to what the road is showing him. And the road is showing him this huge turning radius, and he's already doing 50 because the lanes are super wide and everything like that. So, we can't expect drivers to moderate their speed enough to not hit pedestrians. It's just not reasonable. It's not going to happen. Further along Jane Street, another example of problems here is, so my mom was visiting, and we're going to different places in the ward and stuff, and at this intersection, because this crosswalk, like if you press the button here, it takes so long to activate this crossing. It takes so long that it doesn't seem like it works. Like when my mom tried using this, she's like, yeah, the crossing light is broken, so I had to just wait until there was nobody there. That was really scary. And she's not super fast on her feet anymore. Um, Personally, I know that the residents in this area uh, basically don't use this crossing very much. They end up going to just further up the hill, because this is on a hill, right? So you got to pick this perfect spot where you have sight lines, where you have enough uh, visibility to be able to tell when you've got a break. And I mean, this is crazy. When crossing mid-block is something that people do for safety and not even convenience, because it's not convenient. You have to wait forever, but you have to wait forever at the crosswalks anyway. But people cross here. People don't cross at the crosswalk. Crosswalk takes forever to summon because, oh, we must maintain the throughput on the mighty Jane Street. So, I mean, it'd be nice to have a pedestrian refuge island here since everybody's crossing mid-block anyway, since the intersection is super sketchy. Had this other problem at this spot where, I was on my bike, on the sidewalk because I got no way to use this road. Every time I do, somebody runs me off of it. And there's this car parked like right here. And I take a look at it. I'm like, is this guy gonna go? What's going on? And I had the walk signal. He's just waiting there. And then I start to go. And then as soon as I start going, the guy lurches forward, honks at me and stuff. And I'm like, what is this? So these crossings, they're not respected by drivers. And they're not safe for us. Another time I'm crossing from north to south here, and this driver whips around the corner right in front of me. And I've got the thing is, he had the green light. I have the green light. And we're supposed to mix together in this spot with this, again, this super generous corner turning radius, and this road that is, part of one of these, cycling safety handbooks is when you have a neighborhood where the side streets are not continuous and not connected. So when you've got neighborhoods like this that are designed to funnel traffic onto the main streets with with confusing little bits and pieces of neighborhoods, and this is not really entirely like that. We've got some flow back and forth, but there is no continuous north-south side streets in this area. That's the thing. All through the spot, and Ward 11 has all these segments where the only north and south roads are the main streets. Rockcliffe is really sketchy for cyclists and stuff because this huge hill here. So we end up having to use Jane one way or the other. And you have to use either Jane or Rockcliffe to get through here. Along this spot, it's got a side path, which of course you can't use in the winter. And so the gist of what I'm saying is like this one guide to walkable and cyclable neighborhoods kind of mentions that when you don't have these ample side street routes like they do downtown, the traffic on the main streets is like extra aggravated. It's more aggressive, it's more desperate, it's going faster just because everybody has to be there. So that's the other thing that is putting stress on these intersections. I've had trouble at this intersection so many times, and you're turning onto a really small side street here. There's no reason to have this massive racetrack style turning radius in these two spots. If you're coming off of Haney, the expectation isn't that you're doing 40 or 50 or 60 already. The expectation is that you're doing 20 or 30 and that you're going to speed up after you get onto Jane Street. So what's the point in this generous turning radius here if you're leaving Haney? If you're getting onto Haney from Jane Street, the expectation is that you slow down to whatever speed you're going to be using on this side street before turning onto it. So it's not just that the problem is at the intersection. The problem extends further over to, oh shoot, I'm not capturing my cursor. No, none of this is going to make sense. But, damn, I suck at making these videos. But I'm not going to start over. So this is really all about, turning radius and raised crossings. This is what we need at basically all these intersections. Which is, that's a big ask. But we want to provide pedestrian safety. Everybody's a pedestrian at some point, and you know what? The ward is full of people who don't have cars. Check it out. This block here, and the block behind it, this is thousands and thousands and thousands of people. This is like several thousand people who live on this one block. And a couple hundred parking spaces. And this is, we want to encourage parents to get their kids to bike to school, get their kids to walk to school, teenagers being able to bike and walk to school, skateboarding, longboarding, rollerblading, stuff like that. We got problems with youth and, and teenage obesity. So this whole scheme of imprinting racetracks onto our neighborhoods and making it just ultra sketchy to walk, it's not so good. It doesn't work. The other thing is, like, Jane is never full. During rush hour, it's backed up at the intersections, and then between the intersections, it's barren. We got drivers using both lanes just to pass each other, not because they need that capacity, but just to pass each other. We got these spots where there's 5 lanes for no reason. Like, do we need a left turn lane for this one property here? We got one driveway here and a dedicated left turn lane so that people can get there. Like, that makes no sense at all. Okay. This is another ultra sketchy spot. As you can tell from the ghost bike that has been stationed here. I wonder if it's on. Wonder if it's been updated yet. There's the ghost bike. Look at that. So you can see the ghost bike. This is what people put up when a cyclist gets killed by a driver on Toronto's roadways. And yeah, this is a great spot to get hit by drivers. Of course, there's room for a proper bike lane, proper multi-use trail or something like that here, just barely. But what we have now is 2 very small bike lanes that go from over here to the intersection, and don't really provide protection. But the thing is, unprotected bike lanes, one thing that they do is they apply visual narrowing to the roadway. So the way it is in this picture, which is not updated, the lane is super wide, and we've been making these super wide lanes with the idea that, oh, okay, this is wide enough for a driver and a cyclist to share. But the result is simply that drivers see wide lanes, they go super fast in the middle of the lane. They go fast enough that they are not giving themselves enough time to slow down without getting rear-ended by some other driver when they see a cyclist next to them that they have to go around. The other thing is, when drivers have solid center lines, they are less likely to give cyclists more space because they feel nervous about crossing the solid line. So these roads are actually a bit more safe when they have no center line, or when the center line is dotted, because the dotted center line is like, okay, you can cross this to pass people. So that's just a little side note on these roads and the lane markings. The way that the way that cyclists get to and from this shopping center is we come in on this sidewalk here, which of course is way too narrow to share with drivers, so you're basically biking, or with pedestrians, so you're basically cycling down this sidewalk next to where we have 5 lanes that we don't need. The super narrow sidewalk next to this super wide roadway that is never full. This road is never full. I'm so frustrated. It's really easy to get frustrated when you can't cross this. You can't cross this spot without, or you have to, like, pedestrians have to yield to right-turning drivers when we're crossing this, and we have to yield to left-turning drivers as well. Simply because they're going super fast, and again, they've got these corner radiuses that say go fast when you're going around the corner, because otherwise you're going to be slowing down the drivers that are behind you. And as you can see, there's not that many drivers, and this is kind of a typical load on Jane Street, but they're going super fast. They're using both lanes in order to pass each other. So even when there's not a heck of a lot of drivers on here, they're going fast, and they're going fast because they're under pressure. They want to go fast, of course. I want to go fast too, but they're under pressure from behind as well, and they're making sure to not have too much space in front of and behind them, because then somebody would jump in there. So pedestrians crossing here get cut off by drivers turning right and other drivers turning left. This is what's happened to me, and so I don't use this crossing. As a pedestrian, I just don't use this crossing. I go over here and I cross I would love a better computer. That would be so nice. I walk over here on the grass, or the mud, or the slush, whatever it is, and I cross here because in this spot over here, I actually have some lead time. I can tell when somebody's speeding toward me. I can tell when I've got a little break in the traffic. I don't have like 3 sources of traffic that I have to contend with and that I have to yield to. Okay, and the other thing is, like, I'm a big proponent of the shared space scheme of design, which is, it's like revolutionary, and it's kind of like back to the old school design of streets, where you merge the sidewalk with the road. You kind of impose pedestrian space on the road. The carriageway ends up getting narrowed, and you get you remove signals from intersections, and you narrow the roadway so much that people do this kind of are moving in continuous low speed, instead of bum rushing the intersections at 50 and then start stop super high speed, and then lots of waiting and stuff. So you end up doing basically 20 or 30 kph all the time, and rarely having to stop. And then pedestrians and cyclists kind of gain access to the road because drivers just aren't going super fast. The cool thing is, it's been shown to maintain roadway capacity and maintain, like, improve drive times. So this is a scheme where drivers lose a lot of road space, but actually it doesn't create more congestion, and they end up being able to get where they want at around the same speed. So it's like the efficiency just goes way up, because you're not requiring a big signaling situation to deal with drivers going through the intersection at 50 kph. So you give up on being able to just bomb through intersections super fast, and what you get out of it is no more waiting, and way more, like, predictable and sort of civilized driving and cycling and walking experiences. But the thing is, everybody's concerned about, what about blind people? what kind of experience do they have with all the facilities that they rely on being removed? Well, the facilities that they rely on are there because drivers are going to go super fast. And so my point is, if we're concerned about blind people being able to use the road, me as a perfectly sighted person with great reflexes and everything like that, I can't use these crosswalks. So why would we be expecting blind people to be able to use it? I've never seen a blind person walking around in this ward unescorted, and I can see why, because no matter what kind of facilities they have, beeping stuff, special crossings, whatever, it doesn't matter because drivers are bombing through them super fast. So this is why I think the shared space scheme could work, but one way or the other, these crossings are unsafe for everybody. One of the committee members was talking about how they know their kids can safely bike somewhere, or they know their kids can safely walk somewhere, use the sidewalk. Their kids have enough autonomy and they're smart enough to do this, but the crosswalks aren't safe enough. And that's really sad, but it's understandable considering that we are designing these intersections to be traversed at highway speed almost, at 50, 60 kph. And we're providing all these extra turning lanes and stuff like that, and super wide corner radius, which, leaves pedestrians with not enough room to do stuff. It's just too sketchy. So this is just, a few different spots along Jane and Keel that I have personal experience with. But these intersections are generally like this. They're not safe for pedestrians. The other thing I saw at one point is I witnessed an old lady with a walker trying to traverse, trying to get across Jane right here, which it seems ultra crazy, but again, people are crossing mid-block to avoid having to cross on the crosswalks because the crosswalks are more sketchy. So people cross over in this spot all the time. I mean, right now, if we replace this left turn lane with a pedestrian refuge spot, that would make this crossing way more safe than the crosswalk to the south, than any of the crosswalks, and people would use it a lot more than they use the crosswalk. That's the totally crazy thing about this. So, I mean, one of the things we could do to make all these roads safer is just replace some of these left turn lane areas with pedestrian refuge islands, because it's pretty easy to wait for a break in the traffic, because because this road design is crazy and we've got way more lanes than drivers actually need, the traffic in these areas comes in waves. So you get a big rush of traffic, and then the one direction of the road is empty for, more than long enough to cross. And then the next rush of traffic comes. Well, the problem is it takes a long time to wait for a time when there's a break in the traffic in both directions. And when you don't have pedestrian refuge islands in the middle, that's what people have to do. They have to wait forever for a break in both directions of traffic. So because the traffic comes in waves on a lot of these streets, we could totally get away with putting refuge islands in the middle, and then we'd have a lot less. We'd be able to avoid putting in. There's a lot of spots where that would reduce the need for additional traffic lights. Basically, if you put in pedestrian refuge islands between the intersections to make mid-block crossings safe. Because it's not a matter of, do we want to encourage people to cross mid-block? Yes, we do, because at this point, it's safer than crossing on the crosswalks. And the other thing is, it's already happening. We're not going to stop it from happening. Just like we're not going to stop cyclists from using the sidewalks here. Well, we could go ahead and police them, it's not going to make much of an impact at all. I mean, there's it just doesn't make any difference. So we might as well provide cycling facilities. And that's the same thing with mid-block crossings. It's like, yeah, it's not a matter of whether we want to encourage people to do this thing that might be dangerous. They're already doing this thing that is dangerous, but is less dangerous than what they're avoiding, which is crossing at the intersection. So we might as well make that more safe. And it's surprisingly safe. Like, even on these high-speed roads, as long as you got enough lead time, as long as you've got enough sight line and you can see really far down the road, even though drivers are doing 60, 70 kph, as long as you have an island in the middle, you can do a two-stage crossing pretty easily. So this is also, I want to point out this segment of Eglinton that this is really annoying. Like, before making this video, I tested out my browser to make sure that it was rendering this up fast, and now that I'm in the middle of the video, it's like getting all sluggish. So, Eglinton and Weston, this is one of the spots that makes life hell for pedestrians, and like, honestly, as an ex-driver, I don't appreciate these kind of roads. As somebody who drove for 10 years with, no accidents, and one speeding ticket, like, I don't appreciate big, crazy intersections like this where everybody's under a ton of pressure to go super fast and there's all these extra lanes and stuff like that. I just don't. They're sketchy and stressful for drivers, and I honestly think people are generally like this. I care more about stress than I do about commute time. Commuting stress, I can budget for more time to do something, but I can't, there's no way I can offset the effect of something being ultra stressful. Like, a really stressful hour of commuting just seems way longer than a really stressful, than a non-stressful hour and a half of commuting. So we gotta do something to take the stress out of our roadways. Oh, the woman I was talking about that was trying to cross Jane, she ended up stopping in the left turn lane. This is something people are doing all the time, using the left turn lane as a pedestrian refuge island. Ultra sketchy. It's terrifying. But it's practical. Like, that's the crazy thing when we're forcing people into situations where they're doing something terrifying because it's practical. That's crazy. One of the super weak points in the cycling network, the unofficial ultra sketchy cycling network in here, because we're relying on Rockcliffe as our major north-south corridor for cyclists in this neighborhood. That means that in order to go north, there is no real way for cyclists to safely, conveniently, comfortably go north. It's definitely not all ages and abilities because of, like I said, this aforementioned crazy Rockcliffe Hill. So, but this is the expectation of cyclists, is that they're going to go north using Rockcliffe. They're going to get to Guestville via Lambton, which was recently resurfaced in a way that really doesn't help cyclists at all. Lambton is a weird road to use. It's like, it could be so safe, but it's sketchy. This is one of the roads where it needs to not have a solid center line. It needs to have a dotted center line or no center line, because drivers are passing cyclists way too close because they're hesitant to cross that center line. And meanwhile, there's all these, like, a left turn lane here, really? You need a left turn lane on here, and then this spot on the other side is just like, you can't use it. That's a little nuts. Like, this whole segment could have a bike lane, except of course we need on-street parking in front of the school that's down here. So Lambton, it's sad. It's just one of these streets that, Yeah, I use it on my bike all the time, but it's not for all ages and abilities, even though it goes right past a school. You know, this is the type of spot where we need cycling facilities that are totally safe for everybody. And also, this going from Lambton to Guestville, this is a perfect example of where a ridiculously broad corner turning radius leads to people going super fast around this corner. So many, like a lot of the time when I'm going south through this area, I'm going south on Guestville, I'm turning onto Lambton, I'll be right, be coming south. Just wait for it to render. I hate my computer. Trying to make videos that are watchable, and it's like, what the? Okay, so when I'm coming south onto here, and I arrive here at this stop line, which you can see it's set so far back because this ridiculously broad corner. I'll be right here, and I've got left turning drivers from here almost running into me. They don't turn into the far side of Guestville. They turn right into the middle of this street. So drivers come around here, and because of this super broad corner, on these two roads where you're supposed to be going 30. So we got these roads that say do 30, and then we got this corner turning radius that says keep doing 30 or 40 around this corner, and drivers seriously end up getting right here. So that's nuts. It's right next to, you know, right nearby this school. So that really sucks. But when you know, cycling up to Guestville, because cyclists want to avoid Weston and Eglinton, you end up crossing Eglinton mid-block in this spot. Oh, now my browser's really starting to try to do stuff, you know, trying to help out, you know. But everything I have is broken. So, okay, so cyclists coming north and south through this area, we've got a crossing problem here, where cyclists and pedestrians end up using this left turn lane as a refuge island, which is completely crazy. So what we need is an actual refuge island here. And the expectation is, oh, well, I'm just going to bike over to where Eglinton crosses Weston. And, you know, every time I do, I get run off the road in this curb lane, or I'm sharing this sidewalk here with pedestrians. So traversing this segment of sidewalk on a bike next to next to this super wide road featuring 4, 5, 6, 7 lanes. We got 7 lanes for drivers. We got less than a meter for pedestrians and cyclists, like this guy here. You expect this guy to be in this curb lane? No. You don't expect this guy to be in this curb lane at all. Nobody does. So, yeah, have fun hanging out at this bus stop where there's practically no place to wait next to 7 super wide lanes. Look how wide these lanes are. Super wide. It's a ridiculous expectation. So, you know, to get through north, nobody's doing this. Nobody's, you know, using this to, well, they are, and it sucks. But the sensible way to get across here, and the way that, you know, a lot of people use, is you stop at Guestville here, you wait for the traffic coming from west to clear, you bike across to here, and then wait in this tiny little strip here. You wait in this tiny little spot until the westbound lanes on the north side of the road are clear, and then you bounce across the road to this side street, and then you can take the side street to get to, wow. This is why I don't make a lot of videos. Yeah. Just take a little break while I get my computer to work here. I don't even know where I am anymore. Listen, I try to make videos and stuff, and right in the middle of making it, my computer goes all haywire. All right, so we're looking east, and to get to let's say you want to go north in the ward along Weston, or you want to go northeast to get out of the ward on Ray Road. This is the thing. Ray Road it's kind of like the only cyclist accessible crossing that's going east or going northeast. You can't really use Eglinton, so cyclists end up crossing this part of Eglinton, like I said, on the west of the intersection, and then using the side streets here to get to this spot on Weston, and then going up Weston to cross at Ray. And it's just a really sketchy experience trying to get across there. So I think those are all the spots I wanted to talk about. Plus, there's no point in continuing this presentation because my computer is just completely so haywire. This is one of the things about our group is we have crappy technology. Like, I can't make maps. Nobody can make maps. We need some sort of production stuff.